Big Papa Pump. Holla if you hear me. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the video, the top 5 cities to build an online business, and how getting this wrong almost cost me over $100,000, and I don't want you to make the same mistake that I made, which is why I am recording this video for you. So with that said, let's get into this video, switch cameras real quick, and boom, bada bing, we are ready to get rolling. We already covered that, so we're gonna skip ahead and keep this baby moving. So the considerations: internet speed and quality. So internet speed is obviously important if you have an online business because you rely on the internet, right? Pretty obvious. Quality also important for the exact same reasons. And this kind of relates to the story that I'm going to tell you that almost cost me over $100,000. So stay tuned for that. Next, we have cost of living, because if you're just getting started, you probably want to keep your expenses as low as possible and get as much value for your money as possible, because doing those things will allow you to reinvest more money into the business. And if you are an American citizen, you can take advantage of the FEIE plan. I am not a tax advisor or anything like that, be do your own research on that, but essentially your first 120 some odd $1,000 of income is tax free. You have to fill out the right forms and do all that good stuff. Once again, talk to a tax attorney if that is for your situation. But it goes without saying, you should be reinvesting in your business. And my competitive advantage when I was getting started a decade ago was the fact that I could reinvest a lot more into my business, and it allowed me to pay more for a customer in my business because my costs were so low in comparison to some of my competitors. And for reference, I got started in San Diego. Then I went to Thailand and Spain, and being able to slash my monthly expenses from 5 to 6 grand to 1 grand, well, obviously I just had to take a lot less money out of the business, and I chose to reinvest that money, so I grew a lot faster. Next up, we have ease of access. Probably not for the reasons you think, and that's because visa runs or nomading around like a crazy person are absolute productivity killers. They're absolutely going to slow down your progress, because the people who have to pack up their shit every week, 2 weeks, every month are going to suffer from lack of productivity, lack of focus, lack of discipline, because they can never get into a groove. They constantly have other things on their mind, constantly looking for the next place to go, constantly booking flight tickets or, God forbid, 8-hour bus rides or shit like that. And so you just don't want to deal with that. And it harms discipline because, for example, whenever you go to a new country or city, you have to find a new gym. You have to create a new routine. And the people who can just lock in for 12 months are going to be further ahead than the people who are fucking bouncing around every week for a year. That's why I have an entire video talking about the digital nomad dream is dead and why it is different now. What the difference is going to places where you don't need to visa hop or nomad around, but you can stay for 6 months or 9 months or at least 3 months at a bare minimum. But I'm not going to harp on that point too much, because unless you're stupid, you understand what I'm saying here. You are not going to be productive if you're just bouncing around. I don't know a single super successful person who just fucking bounces around, especially when they first just got started. But anyway, let's keep progressing. Next up, are they fun? I'm not the work until the wheels fall off kind of guy. I'm not going to tell you to go lock yourself in a dark room for 12 months, work 18-hour days, and go fucking full on monk mode. That is not me, because I like to go out, I like to have fun, I like to enjoy my life. And yes, that includes dating as well. So we're going to touch a little bit on that. So for you single women watching this, I'm not going to have a lot of input for you because I don't know what dating is like as a woman. But for the single dudes out there looking for fit, friendly, feminine, beautiful, beautiful women, then I am your guy. Also, I should give you the caveat, I've been to over 70 different countries, and I've been doing this for over 10 years, so I have learned a lesson or two. Now, finally, quality of life is a really, really important factor for me. Now, I say that's important because there are certainly places that you could go that are less expensive than some of the places I'm going to mention on this list. But I am not going to live in an absolute shithole. You may be different than me, and you may be willing to tolerate a place that has no running water and no toilets and no electricity, and you would just buy a Starlink or something for internet. I don't know. That isn't me, but those are the considerations for this video in this list. So, first up, 90-90 Eurosplit. And this is probably something you've heard of where you spend 90 days in the Shenzhen area, 90 days outside of the Shenzhen area. And there are just way too many factors to get in depth on this because it really depends on where you want to be and spend your time in the 90-90 split. So, with that said, the most important thing is knowing the non Shenzhen countries that you can spend your time in, which are probably going to be Albania, Serbia, at least of the recording of this video, Montenegro, Georgia, Armenia, and there's a few others that I'm just blanking off the top of my head. But be aware that this list is always changing. So, for example, January 1st of 2025, Bulgaria and Romania joined Shenzhen. So, some people were doing Bulgaria and Romania as their non-Shenzhen, but they can't do that anymore. So that's something to be aware of. But for me personally, what I would probably do is I'd probably spend time in some of the more desirable places for most people, which would be Portugal or Spain or Italy or Greece, although the infrastructure in Greece isn't necessarily the greatest. And some of you might want to be spending time in like Latvia or Estonia or Poland. Although, if you're a United States citizen, you can essentially live in Poland without a visa by using the bilateral visa agreement, which is essentially an exemption where you have to leave Poland and go to like Ukraine every 90 days, and then you can come back and you get another 90 days. But with that said, I'm not sure if you would be able to go to like Germany or Portugal because it would count as your 90 days. So that's not something that would particularly interest me, but it is a way to kind of game the system for now, at least. As always, do your own research into these specific loopholes, if that's what you want to call it, although technically it's not a loophole. And things can always change. So, with that said, don't just take my word for it. I'm just some idiot on the internet. Do your own research on the Poland bilateral visa agreement before you actually try and use it. But with that said, the Euro split, obviously, it depends on which of those places you choose and which of the places you choose to spend your non-Shenzhen days. So, like I was saying, for me, I would probably do like summers in Czech Republic or Croatia or Portugal or Spain or Italy, some of my favorite countries in the world. And then the other 90 days I would spend in Albania because Albania, you get 1 year visa free access. And I've been looking in the wrong camera this whole time. So, you know what? We are actually just going to do this. We're just going to permanently switch this camera to the one that is on the screen. So, with that said, back on topic, Albania, this could serve as your 90 days non Schengen, or you could just lock in for a year in Albania because it's 1 year visa free access for Americans. Now, I recently spent some time in Albania. Some of the places I would recommend are Tirana, Durrës, Vlore, Saranda, especially if you're looking for more like the beach vibes. Now, Albania, cheap, good weather, great food, friendly people, amazing location, and I had absolutely no problems with the internet. My videos are typically around 200 gigabytes, and I was uploading those no problem from Tirana and Durrës. So I would absolutely, absolutely recommend Albania, if not only for the 1 year visa free access, You also could do this in Georgia, I believe it is, although you want to be aware of the regional hostilities that are going on at any given time. So that is one thing to be aware of. And in full transparency, if I was getting started from zero, if this was day one for me, Albania would probably be top of my list because of the amazing location. Obviously, you can go pretty much anywhere in Europe from Albania, and you wouldn't really have to worry about the 90-day rule because you're gonna be spending pretty much all year in Albania. So if you wanna take a weekend trip to Spain or Portugal or some of those other places, Morocco, then you could do that no problem. So I really think Albania is going to have massive nomad growth if it hasn't gotten there already. I've seen more people talking about it recently, so it could be trending that direction. And once again, I can't impart on you the importance of it being 1 year visa-free access. Next up, we've got Peru, so Lima. I'm sure there's other options. I've only spent time in Lima. 6 months visa free, cheap, good time zone, great food, solid internet. I don't think I mentioned the time zone in Albania, which is obviously quite a few hours ahead of the United States. So that is a big drawback. Also, all these places are safe enough, in my personal opinion, and all these places reflect places that I would go and have a good time in nightlife, dating, yada, yada, yada. So they all get my stamp of approval in all those aspects. But with that said, there's also great food in Lima, some of the best food in Latin America, in my personal opinion. If you took out Mexico, probably the best food. I mean, even if you include Mexico, Peru is like right there. The food there is absolutely amazing. And then the internet in Lima was solid enough for my personal usage. Once again, my average video is about 200 gigabytes, so keep that in mind. And I do a little bit of live streaming and like Zoom meetings to private clients and stuff like that. Never had an issue. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're like a Twitch streamer or something like that, I don't know. Next up, we've got Thailand, and Thailand, frankly, there are just way too many options to list. As many of you know, I have multiple homes, Portugal, here in Mexico, and in Thailand, I actually have two. So I have one in a small little island called Koh Lanta, and Bangkok as well, but so many people love Koh Samui or Phuket or Chiang Mai or Chiang Rai or Trong or Krabi or so there's just so many different options in Thailand that we aren't going to get into the nitty-gritty. But what Thailand essentially boils down to is they have a decent visa policy nowadays. It used to be really, really rough. And that's 60 days plus 30 days renewable, and they crack down on border runs from what I know. I personally have a Thai visa, so it doesn't really concern me. But even when I first started going like 10 years ago, they were cracking down on border runs. In fact, I know people who had problems in Thailand, Vietnam, and probably some other places with border runs where they had like a year-round lease and they tried to go back to Vietnam or Thailand and they went, nope, you've been taking advantage of the system. We're not letting you in. And then they essentially screwed themselves over. So be very, very cautious about that particular thing. That said, you get 90 days and you can border run, I guess, after that. Once again, I'm not super familiar with the new system. This is something they just implemented not that long ago as well. So be aware of that. But 90 days, decent enough. Then you could go to Vietnam, or another place that I wanted to put on this list is Malaysia because I think it really gets overlooked and underrated because it's absolutely great value for your money. But I think Thailand overall is better for quality of life purposes. It's cheaper, better nightlife, and as I allude to here, you just get extraordinary value. So, as everyone knows, Thailand super cheap. The time zone is absolutely horrific if you are an online business owner and you're doing like live calls or something like that, be ready to either have live calls at really early times for your customers or really late times slash early mornings for you because the time zone is absolutely crazy. I think it's like the complete opposite. Anyway, next up is there's absolutely great food, great nightlife, all that stuff. Internet is fantastic, no problems there. Obviously, if you're in like somewhere provincial, that's probably different, but I'm not telling anyone to go hang out in a provincial area. Next up, and then finally, it's just extraordinarily great value for your money, and you get a really high quality of life in return for what you have to pay. So this is pretty much option number two outside of Albania if I was getting started from zero once again. And I currently spend a lot of time in Bangkok and the islands as well because no matter how much money you have, Thailand is a fantastic place. If you're into the UFC, there's like John Jones who has, tons of money and he absolutely loves Thailand as well. So it's not just a money thing. It's everybody loves Thailand because it's just a fantastic place to be. Then finally we have Mexico, and this brings me to the story time. So, here is where I almost made a catastrophic mistake. And that is the fact that I went to a place called Puerto Escondido about 8 years ago, 7 years ago. Don't quote me on that. And the internet was absolutely horrific. It would work sometimes and then it would go away, and then you didn't even have cell service in some of the places. And I had a really, really important business meeting, and I went to a place, thought I had a good internet, and I had my phone internet as backup. And long story short, I could not connect to this Zoom meeting. And I couldn't even message the person because my cell phone service didn't work. So they just thought I completely ghosted them on this meeting. And this meeting was for someone that was going to bring my company about $10,000 plus per month between the service fees as well as our commission fees. And so they thought I ghosted them. I couldn't message them. And back then, it wasn't particularly easy to go from town to town and to get back to places that had reasonable reception. So it took me like a couple days to respond to them. And I explained to them what happened, and they were understanding, luckily. But if that was my first client, my only client, or something like that, that could have been one of the most detrimental experiences of all time. And I understand now that the internet might be better in that region, but just be very aware of that. So, with that said, tons of people love like Oaxaca, you got Puerto Vallarta, you got Cancun, you got Playa del Carmen, you got Tulum, you got Monterey, you got Mexico City, you got Guadalajara, you got Mazatlan. Once again, too many places to name, but a lot of people are in Mexico because it's 180 days visa free, so 6 months on arrival, which obviously is super great. The time zone is obviously fantastic. It's right next to the United States. Great location because, once again, you're right next to the United States. So it's pretty easy to go back to the United States for, let's say, a family reunion or holidays. Whereas if you're going from Asia, not so accessible. The food is relatively decent. The weather is relatively decent. Massive country, so it kind of depends where you are in the country. The internet, as I just alluded to, is a bit region specific and dependent. And then, final note, it is cheap-ish, but it's not as cheap as a lot of people think it is. So, especially if you want to be in a desirable place in Mexico City or some of those places I listed, it's not going to be bottom of the barrel prices. It's going to be lower than what you're probably used to, but it's not going to be like Albania or Southeast Asia type of pricing. It's probably going to be more similar to some of the places that I alluded to in Europe, although probably slightly more affordable. Anyway, with that said, that wraps up the list. Once again, a lot of your favorite places may not have actually made this list because of the visa issue. Because once again, I think that is one of the biggest things people overlook when they get started on this journey is they go to the places and then they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm making a little money online," or "I'm starting to make money online," or "I'm trying to," and then they just fucking go from place to place, week to week, month to month, and that is a huge hindrance on the progress you can make. So that's why you don't see places like Bali and some of the other popular destinations on this list. Now, once you're making like 5 to 10K per month, then you can get like visas and stuff, and most of this stuff isn't as relevant. But until you're at that point and until you have those visas, I would highly recommend just going somewhere where you can at least lock in for minimum of 3 months. All right. So with that said, that is the end of this video. Let me know what you think. What would you change? What would you add? Like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next video where hopefully I am looking into the right camera for a majority of the video. And with that said, Big Papa Pump, holla if you're hearing me, is out of here.